Hello and welcome to Beyond the Scale. Today we are talking to Tiny Bechtel. Tiny and I met in a large carnivore group and experimented with their fasting protocol. We checked in on each other and gave each other support and encouragement along the way. Since then, I've decided fasting really isn't for me, but Tiny and I still touch base with one another a year later. Tiny is an RN in neurology. She is a nutrition, fasting, and fitness enthusiast who is reversing insulin resistance with carnivore and fasting. Hi, Tiny. Thank you
Hi,
for being. We're so
thank
happy to have
you. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. That was a great introduction. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be with you guys today.
Good. We're happy to have you. Could you kind of fill us in on your backstory? What was your health and your life like before carnivore? What made you decide to go carnivore? And just bring us up to date on all of that.
All right. So my story starts a long time ago. So I'm 38 years old. So it started way back when I was a child. So as a child, I was an overweight child. I was born at 6 pounds something. So I was very tiny, hence my name. But quickly after that, I just put on the weight, and I was the chubbiest kid in my homestead, and everybody just said it out loud. I just always knew I was chubby, and my cousins and my siblings weren't. So as I grew up into a teenager, I started being worried about the fact that I was overweight. And people back home, I'm from Southern Africa in Swaziland, they're very vocal about your weight. They'll tell you you know what, Tiny, you're just getting too big. It's, you're eating a lot. Or what are you eating? I mean, you're getting bigger and bigger. And so I just had that in the back of my mind, I am big and I need to do something about this, but I didn't know what to do. I was a child. So I did all of the wrong things, including trying to not eat at all or try to make sure I cut my portions. I remember when I was in, I think I was early high school or whatever it is before high school, we call it primary school back home. There was some magazine and he was talking about these diet pills. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I wish I lived in America so I could just have access to these diet pills and, all the little advice they would give in magazines. If you eat more fiber, you get more fuller. So then I would try to figure out what fiber was. It was just this whole to do. And then fast forward, I came to college in the United States. So this is now 2008. And I started college. And at that point, I put on a whole lot more weight. One, because I was moving from home where I ate probably 3 meals a day with hardly any snacking, to coming to the US where there's just food everywhere. And I was in a university. I stayed on campus. So, I mean, there was just food all day. And I did not control myself because it was just available. And I love food. I like to eat. So I just ate and ate. And I put on a whole lot more weight. And I did some other, dieting in between that. And there wasn't a diet that I didn't try. So if you told me that this thing is going to help you lose weight, I tried it. Fast forward to, this is probably now I was working as a nurse. And I had done, Weight Watchers. I had done, some juice cleanse. I had done a whole lot of things. But then somebody said to me, do you know, have you ever tried the low carb diet or ketogenic diet? And I was a nurse at this point and I'd never heard of it. And this was probably 2015, actually. This person mentioned keto and I'd been dieting, doing other things before that. And I was like, no, what do you mean? And she explained to me, you just eat, meat and vegetables. You don't eat any carbohydrates. And I was like, what? And she showed me her wedding picture and she looked good in her picture. I'm like, so you just ate meat and vegetables. You didn't eat carbs. And she's explained the whole thing. So I did it that year and I lost a bunch of weight. And I was like, wow, this thing is actually real. But then, of course, I fell off again with my food addiction and my sugar addiction. And now fast forward to 2021. So earlier that year, I decided, you know what, keto was the thing that I did where I didn't feel hungry. And so maybe if I try that again, I can lose weight. I get. But this time around, for some reason, it was just so difficult to actually stick to it. There was a whole lot more keto snacks, and I was, buying all of them, eating all of them, binging on them, which would lead me to regular sugar binges. And it was just insane. And then on YouTube, looking up, trying to figure out, well, why is keto failing me this time around? Like, why can I not be consistent? And I saw a video of Lily King, and she's talking about, I eat beef and butter. And I was thinking, this girl is nuts. What the hell is she talking about? But because of her energy, like the way she speaks, I was just able to watch her entire video. And I thought, wow, she's already petite, so I can't relate with her to actually believe that this is a real thing. But then YouTube started suggesting other carnivore people. And one of those people was Laura Spack. And from that day, I was like, okay, I am going to try this carnivore thing. If she was able to, lose the weight and reverse some of her, illnesses in her husband and her family, and she's doing this with her kids, what do I have to lose? I've been on every other diet. So if this is a weight loss diet, I'm going to do it. And of course, my only reason at that point was I want to lose weight. So I just went for it.
So that was kind of your why, was originally fueled by the desire to lose weight.
My whole life was I needed to lose weight. I've spent so much of my life trying to lose weight. So that was my only focus ever. That's the only thing I think about. I think about losing weight, hopefully losing weight, what I'm going to eat, what I shouldn't eat, when I'm going to eat next. My entire life, which is so sad now looking back, was all about, I just need to lose weight. If only I could lose weight. So that was my why the day I decided to join Carnivore. Mm-hmm. That's it.
It's interesting that you say that, like, wondering why keto failed you the second time around, but then mentioning that all of those keto treats had come on the market. And that's huge. Like that's a really that's a really good point, because it still falls into that processed food category and is probably, even though it's keto macros, designed to be addictive, right? Oh, yeah. To keep people buying it. So yeah.
And I fell for it, I think, because just part of just like my addicted mind, like the things that tasted sweet, and the snacking, like the constant snacking, I just was just like, oh yeah, if I could eat all of this and it's still within my macros, then I'm fine. But it's like, no, I needed to eat real food. So the thing with carnivore, that was great. It was just like, so I don't have to count anything, because that was the thing. It's like, I don't have to count. I don't need to worry about, net carbs, total carbs, right? I just was like, all right, I don't want to do that anyways, because obviously it's not working, because I'm still counting and I'm still gaining weight. So yeah, I'll eat meat all day, every day. I don't care.
That's kind of like where you and I kind of connected with that. Like, because I came from the same kind of, like, I'm just exhausted from all of the counting, and I was skipping meals so I could eat keto stuff. And so, yeah, I can relate. And Amy, I think, has a similar experience. She had been keto for a long time, right?
Yeah, for sure. I was just thinking when you were talking, Tiny, that how, excuse me, we all kind of have that such a similar backstory, everybody that we talk to, I'm sorry, in the carnivore community, it's like, oh, this started when I was so young and I tried this and this and this. Stephanie and I have talked about that. I think I went to Weight Watchers with my mom for the first time when I was 10, and it was just, it just went on from there and until, learning that it's an actual addiction, and that the food is only a little bit of your problem, right? It's the issue in your brain and what you're trying to soothe and all of that kind of thing. So it just so stands out to me that it's always kind of these similar highlights, of it started out when I was young, and then when I went to college, and then when I had kids, and, and for me, yeah, definitely, I had 1,001 health problems, but it wasn't that, it was the weight. Like, I had all of these things I needed to change, for my health. I had Crohn's disease, and I was adding fiber, and it was killing me. But what finally flipped the switch was I've just gained so much weight. I have to, and just the thought that how strong the addiction is, that's finally what brings you to a breaking point. You know what I mean? I think that's so similar for a lot of us. I wanted to ask you what kinds of foods you include on your carnivore way of eating. Spices or no spices or coffee or dairy.
Yes.
All of that.
So coffee, yes, coffee. I tried. I was listening to some of the doctors online. They were just talking about coffee and how it can affect this and that. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to try and quit coffee. On day 3, I was so miserable. And I had to have a conversation with myself, like, Tiny, you have given up so much else.
Yeah.
Why are you giving up coffee today? And so my little dependent mind was like, yeah, let's go get some coffee. So I haven't tried to quit coffee. So it's staying in my diet, and I have coffee every single morning. And then I also include spices and seasonings and herbs. So I use a lot as like seasoning salt, garlic salt, fresh garlic. I also even use I guess aromatics. I'll use onions to cook. I use cilantro. I like the jalapeno peppers. I like chop those in my ground beef. So anything that's just like giving a little extra flavor, I will include it. And then as far as dairy, I love dairy way too much, but I need to be very, very careful. So I've gone several months without it. And then every once in a while, I'll add, I'll have a little bit. I tell myself now with dairy that I'll have it on special occasions, which is fine. But then I realize sometimes on that special occasion, I just do way too much of it because it's like, oh, this is the only day I'm going to have it. So now I've got to eat all of it. So I eat dairy, but I limit it because it's just something that if I can't moderate cheese, for example, like if I just have one, then I want the next, and the next thing I've eaten a whole block of it. So it's one of those that my mind still gets light up from it, or little addiction light comes on, and then I just keep wanting more. So I'm very careful with that. And then as far as cream in my coffee, I used to use heavy whipping cream. But I realized that, well, at the time, I haven't tried in a while, that later on in the day, if I would have heavy cream, I would just like have like these little sneaky thoughts about like cravings that I wouldn't otherwise have. So, and I heard other people say the same things, like that sometimes with heavy cream, they, like, because it's like it spikes your insulin. So then you start craving things. So then I was able to cut that out early on. And I just use, like, I'll do bulletproof coffee with just butter and salt instead of the heavy cream. I miss it because it's a different taste and it's delicious. But then every time I think of buying it, I'm like, I don't want to buy the whole box, because if I buy the whole box, I'm going to have the whole box. So if I could get it in even like smaller servings, then to just have as a treat one day, then I could do that. But so I let go of the dairy, but cheese, especially now after the diet that I did in January, I've just been having some cheese with my eggs and a little bit of it, and it's been fine. I haven't really had any issues, but again, it's the beginning of the month, so I need to be careful. Yeah.
And then generally you eat seafood and chicken and beef, pork, just all the meats.
Everything from the animal kingdom, I eat it all. If it's something that's edible and it's from an animal, I will try it. I actually even like, well, not all organ meats. I know some other carnivores are like, oh, organ meats. I don't seek them out, but I did grow up with liver as something that was eaten back home. And I actually like the taste of it, but not too much. I can only have so much liver before I'm like, okay, I'll eat it and then I'm done with it for a few months. And then I'll crave it, especially like around my cycle. I notice the time that I'm craving liver will be like around my cycle. And then I'm like, I could actually eat some liver. And then I'll eat it that one time. I'll enjoy it thoroughly. And then I'm sick of it for a while. So I eat everything really. And I'm not a picky eater. I try a lot of different meats.
Yeah.
So did you just finished the Lion diet for a month?
Yeah. So for January, I was like, oh yeah, World Carnivore Month. I'm going to celebrate and I'm going to do the lion diet. But I modified it. So, like lion diet is just like ruminants and salt. That's it. And I said, I'm going to call it the tiny lion diet. Actually, another carnivore friend of mine suggested that I call it the tiny lion diet. So my diet was the beef and other ruminants. I did butter, coffee, and seasonings. So I just eliminated all the other meats like the seafood and the pork and chicken, but I still, ate my beef and ruminants with seasonings, coffee, and butter. So I did it for the whole month of January. And at first it was so much fun. I was in this like high. I was feeling so good. I was like, what kind of challenge is this? This thing is so easy. I'm enjoying all of the beef. It's great. And then on week 3, I was like, I am over this. I want to eat my salmon and my pork belly. I cannot believe I have another 2 weeks to go. But of course, like a lot of people on Instagram and on social media, they were doing the lion diet for January. So I was actually getting a lot of encouragement from different people. And then my friends on Instagram that I was chatting with. So everybody's like, you got this. Just try different, cuts of beef. Because I tend to sometimes just eat the same thing over and over again. They're like, just try to cook it a different way. Get some lamb, do this. And so I did. And then week 4, same thing. I'm like, I am so done with this. I just want to lick some salmon. So I ended up like, I did complete the challenge, but yeah, I was like, the first 2 weeks were great. The last 2 weeks were a real struggle. I had to just be like, pull from within. And I remember my boyfriend is like, babe, you don't have to finish this thing. I mean, like, you said you were going to do it, but like, don't torture yourself. I'm like, it's not torture. It's a challenge. I made a promise to myself and now I need to finish. So I did. And honestly, I felt really good. Like I said, like mentally, like I felt really well. Like the first 2 weeks, like I was on a high. Like I was just like, I'm so energized. The last 2 weeks, even though I wanted to not eat beef, I still had this like sense of just like calm. Like my mind was fine. My life was fine. Like I was just feeling well. And I think that like translated to how I was even at the gym, because I could just go harder. Like my focus, like with my weightlifting and all my other exercises, I just felt good. Those were the 2 things that I actually like can pick out and say the lion diet was good for this. Everything else, I didn't notice that much of a difference. So yeah, but it was fun and challenging, which was the point, I guess.
That's interesting. I was going to ask you if you noticed any other benefits to it, but being able to endure more at the gym, that's something.
Yeah, it was good. Oh, you know what? Actually, I took pictures. I just like almost overlooked it, that as if it wasn't important. I took pictures end of December. And then I took pictures the end of January because, my relationship with the scale is still a struggle. So I'm like, I don't want to get on the scale. And then like the thing tells me I'm overweight. And then I get on the scale and then and then it just, So I was like, I'll take these pictures. I can't, like even taking pictures is still just like jabs me a little bit because I don't like to see myself that way. But it's like, if I'm going to take these pictures, I just have to just let it go and be honest with myself. So I took the pictures and then I compared them. And I was just like, oh, okay, like, I guess like my body composition, I can see it. And some of the things I was just like, am I just like making this up? And then my boyfriend and I were like doing like a side by side. And he's like, no, like you can, it's like, it's pretty obvious. Like just, you did good. Like you actually got some result. And I'm sure if you stepped on the scale, you would be very happy. But I was like, I don't want to ruin it. I like the pictures. They're showing me what I need to see. So I'm good. So yes, I did lose inches based on the pictures and just how my clothes fit too. Like my scrubs are just loose. One day I was putting on a pair of pants for work and I just finished ironing these pants. It was early in the morning. I was frustrated that like I didn't fold my laundry right away. So I'm like, I gotta iron these pants. And I'm ironing the pants and I'm quickly putting them on. And after I put them on, I was like, oh my God, I like ironed the wrong pants. These are like my larger pants. These are not the ones that I wanted. So I go to take them off. I'm rushing. And I like just so happened to look at the thing and it just said like, they were like my pants, the ones that I actually wanted. And I was like, oh my God, they fit really loose. So then I just put them on and I'm like, it's fine. I'll just have my little baggy pants for the day. So that was actually nice to see as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. That just removing some of the meat. So I wonder if that's like inflammation from pork or chicken or something.
And also, I think I was eating less though, because with beef, I just get satiated better. I feel like last night I had chicken for dinner, and 3 hours later, I was like, I'm actually hungry, but I don't get like that with beef. I was like most satiated with less volume. So I think my calories actually just decreased also.
Yeah.
So it's a number of factors. And also I was lifting more weights for the month of January. That was one of my goals. So I'm sure there's a whole lot of other factors. And also I was less stressed. So, cortisol was down. I don't know. I think it's just a combination of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think you'll do it again?
No. I
can't
say never. I won't say never, but I have no desire to do it anytime soon. Right. And I think if I did do it in the future, I would just maybe not for a whole month. Like somebody was like, maybe you should have done it in February because it's 28 days. And I was like, maybe, but I don't know. Right now, I'm just so over it. I'm just so glad to be eating everything else. I'm like, I'm not doing this thing again. But knowing me, somebody's going to be like, do you want to do line diet with me? And I'm like, yeah, sure.
Yeah. I just can't imagine that lack of variety. I just eat, like you said, I eat every kind of meat and any kind of animal product, and I have to do that or I will go crazy. So I can't imagine doing it for more than that kind of period of time. I would think your brain would just, but people do it for like a year. It's crazy.
Yeah, some people just enjoy it. I mean, some people like just like even just basic stuff, just meat and salt. And to me, I just, I like beef and salt, but I can't do that same taste every single day. But some people just enjoy that. And I'm like, okay, all right, good for you.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Personal preference.
I'm dying to hear about your work and how all of this thinking, which is a little I don't know what the word is I want, but it's different than the medical community. They're the American Diabetes Association and all that kind of thing. So how does that all work for you, being a nurse and the way you live your life?
Yeah, well, it comes in waves. So, in the beginning, I think I was just so focused on myself and trying to heal myself and not necessarily sharing with anybody at first about, carnivore, because in my mind or in my heart at that time, I still thought it wasn't, I just was I didn't want to share it with other people because they would think I'm crazy, because I also wasn't confident in this way of eating in the beginning. I just thought, I was going to do this to lose weight and then figure out what I'm going to do afterwards. So in the beginning, it was just kind of something I was doing. Very few people knew that I was eating carnivore. But then as time went on and I just, dived into like the education and the nutrition. And then I started, learning about the American Heart Association, their recommendations, the Diabetes Association, the kind of foods we feed patients. And then it started to bother me a lot actually. And even now it's still, there are days where I'm just like, I'll read these things and I'll just get so frustrated. I'm like, this is the kind of thing I have to go to work and encourage people to do and just keep them sicker. So I would get very upset about it. And so I realized that I can't just go to a patient and be like, you know what, you need to stop eating this and this and this and start eating this. So the way that I had to learn how to approach it. And I think I've just gotten different ideas from other healthcare professionals instead of just telling someone to eat this way. Because if somebody came to me and told me you need to stop eating this, I wouldn't listen to them. It's just like, once I need to be ready. So I need to just kind of accept that and, meet people where they are. And a lot of the patients that I work with, they're in the ICU. They are dealing with devastating neurological injuries anyways. The last thing they're worried about right now is not what they should be eating. More, can we save their lives, and can they, eat, again, can they speak again? Can they walk again? Those kind of like really big things. But the ones that are stable, and if their family members are willing to listen, because you can kind of gauge if somebody's wants to have a conversation with you about certain topics. So for example, if I get a patient, they're diabetic and they're making a decision about what they're going to eat for breakfast or for lunch. So I'm helping them order their food, for example. Then I'll make a suggestion, like, why don't we order, like eggs and bacon and sausage? And then, maybe if you're going to have a carb, why don't you just have one instead of having, 3 different carbs on your tray? And some people are okay with that. And some people just want to eat their carbs anyways because they're on insulin and they have such an appetite. And then other times, if somebody is a diabetic and I've just already built a rapport with them, I'll ask them, I was like, so, how are you managing your diabetes at home? Like that's usually how I start the conversation. And then they'll say, I watch my sugar or I take my insulin. And I was like, do you understand that diabetes is something that you can actually reverse? You can be cured from diabetes. And then some of them they don't know that that's something that's reversible. And some of them will be like, oh yeah, I've heard that, if you cut the carbohydrates and, you can reduce the amount of insulin. So then now I'm like, okay, I can have this conversation with this person because they are willing to engage. So then I'll start. I never say carnivore. I never say keto. I just, say, try to focus on eating your meat, prioritizing your protein. And if you like vegetables, try to have some vegetables. And then, the starch is what's going to keep you from reversing it. Like, yeah, you don't have to eliminate all of it at once. I just try to just force protein and some vegetables, and then carbs if you have to, fine. So I just have that conversation with their family members, because a lot of the family members too, and they have diabetes too, they have high blood pressure, they have high cholesterol, they have most of the problems that their loved one laying in the bed has. So I have that conversation with them too. But I just try not to make a lot of recommendations. It's also not in my scope, so I need to be very careful with what I say and how far I take it.
Right.
And they're a lot more receptive, I'm sure, too, if you make those kind of gentle suggestions and talk to them about reducing carbs instead of saying, you can't eat this. You
exactly
can only eat meat and
cut them out. But it's frustrating. I mean, we have patients in the hospital who are, poor controlled type 2 diabetes, and they're on insulin drip. We put them on insulin drip. I mean, if your blood sugar has been like 250 for the last, say, like 2 or 3 checks that we did, we, put you on an insulin drip, and we titrate that drip based on what your blood sugars are every hour. And some of these people, their blood sugar will not budge because they're so insulin resistant. But then we just keep titrating the insulin. I mean, like just 2 weeks ago, I had a patient who was on like 80 something units of insulin an hour. And it's just, and to me, I just like get more and more frustrated because I'm like, it's insulin. They're resistant to insulin, but let me pump more insulin in you. And the insulin is the thing that's going to just keep you just exactly as you are. But there's nothing else I can do for you right now other than keep pumping you full of insulin. And it's just so hard. I just bite my tongue and I just keep going with it. And then they're so hungry. They're so hungry, and all they want is pastries and Jell-O and all of these things. And I'm like, let's get you more rotisserie chicken. And then I have to fight with dietary because I try to order a meal for my patient. And I was like, this patient's on insulin. I understand they're on the diabetic diet, but we don't need to give them any more carbs. So instead of giving them like an extra carb, can I just replace that carb with the protein? Because he likes chicken, he likes rotisserie chicken, he'll eat that. They're like, oh, you need a special order from the doctor from that because that counts as a different entree. You can't. I was just like, oh my God, okay.
Yeah,
it's tough.
so frustrating. Talk to us a little bit about your own battle with insulin resistance and fasting and why you do that.
Yeah, so I thought I was healthy. I thought I didn't know I had problems. And even when I started carnivore or any other diet, I just really thought my only problem was I was overweight. That's the only problem in life was I was overweight. So I didn't think, because I'd gone to doctors before and the only health problem that they would write down was my weight. I didn't have high blood pressure. I didn't have, a lot of these other metabolic problems that people have, or at least that I knew of. I just didn't know. I just thought my problem is weight. And then when I joined fasting, and that's when we met, Steph, like I said, my goal even at that time was just to lose the weight. And then as I like learned a little bit more about, the carnivore diet, being just in the health circle a lot, I started listening to people that were talking about weight, about obesity being a symptom of insulin resistance. So before that, I didn't ever put the two together. I would hear people talk about insulin resistance. I would hear people talking about obesity, but I never thought of those two as being like your expression of insulin resistance can be obesity. Your expression of insulin resistance can be type 2 diabetes. It can be PCOS. It can be these other things. I didn't think of it like that. So when I learned that, or at least understood it to some capacity, I'm like, what if I'm insulin resistant? I've never checked that. All I know is that I'm overweight. So that's when I started to shift my thoughts even harder. Instead of like focusing on the weight myself, it's like, what if I have an insulin resistant problem and I just don't know it because I've never checked it? So then I went to my doctor and I said, as much as we talk about my weight and that I need to lose weight, I need to do this, you have never actually ever checked me for any of the diabetes markers. And I don't even know what my hemoglobin A1C is. I'm 37 years old. I've never checked that. I don't know what my fasting insulin is. I don't know. I just know that my cholesterol and my metabolic other numbers are fine, but can we please check? And so we can definitely check the A1C. But and she gave me a whole thing about the fasting insulin. I was like, can you please just check it? I just need to know. So she did, she ordered it. And my A1C at that point came back and I think it was like 5.3 or 5.4. I don't remember completely. And my fasting insulin was high. And, I know that like the reference range that they use, I think is supposed to be less than 20, but the reference range is based on the average person who is not healthy. So then like listening to other podcasts, they were like, optimal is 5 or less than 5. And mine at that time was 10. And I remember thinking, okay, well, according to the research and other doctors online, even Dr. Ken Berry talks about this a lot, I am insulin resistant. Like, why is my fasting insulin 10? And then, mind you, at this point, I'd already been doing carnivore for over a year, actually. And I'd done fasting and I had lost some weight. I gained weight in the beginning of carnivore and then I lost some weight later when I started being very careful. But so then I wondered, I wonder what my fasting insulin was before I even started carnivore diet a year ago. And now I was just like frustrated. Like, I wish I had like something to reference. So I just had to assume that it was definitely higher before this. And I'm wondering what my A1C was. It was probably higher. And because I've done, like carnivore diet to lower my insulin, and I've done a lot of fasting, this is what has gotten me to a 10. But a 10 is still not good. So now I need to do all of the rest of the things to try and get it below 10. So that was my focus. So I started I was already fasting. I was already eating carnivore, but I had to tweak because I then learned later that even just the amount of protein that one can eat in a day can also affect your insulin. Like you're not necessarily going to get these blood glucose spikes, but it is affecting your insulin. So that's when I was like, all right, I need to think about how much I really need in a serving, because I can eat everything in front of me if it's served, but I don't need to eat all of that. So I needed to, I started tweaking, with the protein. And so I got a CGM and I was just trying to trend like what my blood glucose were in the morning, what they were during the day, that kind of stuff. And then as far as other medical problems that I had, things I didn't think about. Like when I was in my first couple of years work in nursing, I had horrible anxiety. And I was prescribed like an anti-anxiety medication, which I ended up weaning myself off because of just like I had my own stereotypes about mental health at the time, which is ironic because now I am studying to be a psych NP nurse. But anyways, I started to I got myself off that drug, and that's when I got into exercising. I just wanted to fix myself like in the natural way. And at the time, the only thing I knew to do was to exercise and feel better by exercising. But I still had anxiety. I just still had like this baseline thing. And with carnivore, I noticed, like I said about the Lyme diet, like it just kept me at a point where I was just stable. Like I still have my days, where I would have like moments, but like it wasn't like it was before. So that alone, and then just like candida overgrowth. I had like horrible things. Like, I mean, I work out a lot, and I probably should change my shoes more often. But I would like get like this like breakdown like in between my toes a lot. And I just thought that was because I'm, it's athlete's food, I call it. I was like, oh, maybe because I'm an athlete and I work out a lot. But then with carnivore, I realized it just went away, and I don't even know when it happened. I just realized that my toes were clear. And then something else, I used to have like severe, it's like sensitive, like my tongue was very sensitive to certain things. And like things like tomatoes, of course, and alcohol, and like certain things I would eat would just like aggravate it. And I even asked Dr. Ken Berry this question on one of his lives, and I was like, they call it, there's a word for it. I just can't think of it now. But like I would get these patches on my tongue. So they would be like raw spots on my tongue, as if like something was like eating, like it was just like raw. Like if you put acid and it just like be raw, and it would be painful. But like when I eat certain things, it would just like flare it up. And then the more I learned about carnivore, I was like, I wonder, like if my tongue looks like this, and I wonder what my gut is like. I eat these things and I quickly swallow them and like, go brush my mouth but it to soothe my tongue. But like, what's really going on with my gut? So, and then I asked Dr. Camberry, like, like, what is this thing? And is it something I could fix with carnivore? And his answer at that time was just like, oh, this is something that a lot of people have. And, it's not, I forget his exact wording, and I don't want to just say that he said this, but it was pretty much like, it happens. There is no specific cause. There are certain things that can make it worse, like, acidic food, smoking, and alcohol, which I drank a lot of alcohol too at that time. So that also went away. Like my tongue is fine. Like I don't have any like, real sensitivity. So I didn't have any like big medical problems cured by carnivore, but I had just like little things, and just like how I felt, how I slept, my focus is, just how friendly I am. Like I'm just more empathetic. I mean, I always was, I think, but now it's like, I care about what you have to say to me, no matter what. Like, I'm going to hear you out, without being like, I already know, so I'm just a better person. And it has opened up a lot of doors. Like I've made so many friends in my confidence, just talking to people, so it's been mostly mental for me. And then of course my gut, I was always bloated eating veggies. I don't even feel my stomach anymore. Maybe when I have to go to the bathroom, which is once every couple of days, and I'm like, oh, go to the bathroom, but I don't have that constant, like I'm gassy, I'm bloated. Oh, I don't have that. Like, and I always had it. I mean, I always had problems with constipation before carnivore, but the worst part of it was just like the discomfort of my stomach all day, every single day. And then with carnivore, it's like, my tummy is fine. I don't feel it. I don't worry about it. It's just, everything's settled. I can think about something else instead of my, if I'm going to have gas or not.
Right. I can relate to that very much. When all of a sudden those kinds of symptoms are gone, it's like, you don't even notice at first. And then you're like, oh my God, my stomach hasn't hurt for like 3 days. What's going on here? Yeah. It's bizarre.
I think we feel kind of a false sense of security for a long time, especially as far as obesity, when you're younger and obese and those symptoms haven't kind of cropped up yet. And we're kind of under the assumption that, yeah, we're overweight, but I'm healthy because I'm not on any medications. And that kind of isn't really the case. Like they're not connected, like you were saying. Like, you have this problem of being overweight, but that didn't equate a health problem until you understood the connection. Yeah. So what about any kind of future plans? You're studying right now to be, I'm sorry, what was it?
So it's psych, mental health, nurse practitioner.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've been doing that. Well, actually I should have been done, but it's just been very difficult for me to get like clinical sites, or I need a nurse practitioner or a psychiatrist to like just have my clinical rotation. So I have eight credits left, and then I have to try and figure out what I'm going to do afterwards. And I would like to actually use my knowledge and my experience to help other people that are like me or have similarities with me, because a lot of these, I'm actually reading a book right now about like brain health and how even just our diet alone affects our mental health, and how now mental health can be, I don't know if it officially is yet because there's a lot of pushback from big food and all these other companies, but how brain health and metabolic health are just very related. Now, your brain having depression or anxiety is a sign of your metabolic health just being expressed with your mental health. All those things are connected. People who have major depression disorder, they have inflammation in their brains. So, and it's just like, if we fix the way people eat, fix the way people manage their stress, just fix things at a basic level. Like how did our ancestors do it? I mean, they ate real food, they went to sleep, they had community, all of these things that we're just now thinking are like this luxury, but those are just like the simple basic things. So if I could find a way, there's a way I could take my education and my experience and use it to help other people in that way, my dream would be complete, but I just don't know where yet. I don't know where I fit in that space. Yeah, but I will find it.
Yeah, that would be incredible. That would be awesome. Maybe would it be kind of like your own practice? Could you work with holistic practice or any idea?
Yeah, something like that. I mean, in the beginning, I probably for sure would have to work with someone who has kind of similar, thoughts or as myself. I mean, probably in the beginning, I'll just probably get some experience in mental health in general, and then kind of just find out where. So I would love to have my own practice. That would be the end goal for sure. But I know that I have to start somewhere with other people and get my experience and actually even figure out if that's actually what I want to do or where I fit in, in the mental health space. So we'll see.
Yeah. That would be really cool.
Yeah.
And you're in Philadelphia, Tiny?
Yes, I'm in West Philadelphia.
Nice. I was just thinking there's probably more opportunity there than, in a smaller kind of city or whatever. So, to find, other practitioners that kind of are like-minded, I would say.
Yeah. And I mean, there is, even now, I'm actually working with a physician assistant who is completely supportive of my way of eating, which I didn't think was possible. I didn't want to tell my doctor that I was eating a carnivore diet. But I just got linked up with her through a nurse practitioner, actually, because I was just telling my nurse practitioner, I'm so sick of this whole obesity thing on my chart. And you guys just keep telling me I'm obese, but nobody's giving me a solution. So I'm trying all these different things. And then she referred me to a weight management specialist. And at first I was so annoyed by that. I'm like, I'm going to go to this office. They're going to tell me to eat less and move more. They're going to, give me some diet thing that's going to tell me to count this and count that. I don't want to do it. I was just so against it. But I went to the appointment and this lady is amazing, to the point that she's more low carb. She's not 100%, she doesn't think I need to be 100% carnivore. She doesn't think I need to be strict keto, but she definitely is all about low carb and healing and insulin resistance and sleep and stress and all of these things that I'm working on. I'm like, well, here's a doctor who actually listens to the person and isn't just trying to pump me full of medication and telling me all these unrealistic things that I've already done in the past. So there are physicians who think like that, and I just need to find them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So you mentioned a book that you're reading right now. What is that book? What are some other books that you've read and things that you've listened to that have helped you?
Well, this book, I think the doctor's last name is Palmer, if I'm saying it right. And I think this book just came out. I just started reading it on Audible, so I'm just already wowed by it. But other books that I've read that were so just wow to me, I read Dr. Berry's book, Lies My Doctor Told Me. And I've read The Obesity Code by Dr. Jason Fung. I read Life in the Fasting Lane also by Dr. Jason Fung, Megan Ramos, and Eve Mayer. That was a great book because it actually was nice to actually hear, instead of just hearing all the science and all the jibby jabba behind weight loss and fasting, it was just telling a story of a woman and another woman and then a doctor on top of that too, so that was a really exciting book. And then I listen to a lot of YouTube and podcasts, but the podcast that I listen to mostly now, I listen to Nutrition with Judy, and it's not Nutrition with Judy. I mean, it's Judy from Nutrition with Judy, but she has a podcast with Laura Spack, Cutting Against the Grain.
Yeah.
So I listen to that a lot because, like I said, Laura was my girl from day one, and I have followed her journey. And so I just feel like every time I stray away into all these carnivore trends that keep popping up, she always brings me back to, you just need to do what works for you, not fall into all these traps, and just eat meat and monitor yourself. Stop falling for the new shiny thing, because if you're not consistent in this one thing, why do you think you'll be consistent with the next thing that pops up? So I feel like she just gets me. So I listen to their podcast a lot. And then I listen to the Fasting Method podcast. I like them a lot. Actually, I did join their community group, even though they are called the Fasting Method podcast or group. They're not really only focused on fasting. I mean, fasting is a big tool that they use, but they talk a lot about nutrition and health and all the different diets. They're not carnivore at all. They encourage any diet that works for somebody, and they're a great support group. And so I follow that podcast, and I actually subscribe to their community as well. So that's the ones that I can think of right now. Yeah.
Great.
I think you should go work with Dr. Palmer, Tiny.
I would love to. I think I'm going to send him an email one day.
I'm reading that book right now too, and I can't get enough of it. It's blowing my mind.
It's great.
Yeah.
I'll put a link to all the books that you mentioned and the podcast and everything. I'll put that in the description, along with a link to your Instagram. Is there any other place that people can find you, or is it you're just mainly on Instagram?
Just on Instagram, yeah. It's the only one I can keep up with. I tried to I think I did set up a YouTube, but I was like, I'm not going to be posting on YouTube. There's a ketovoretinyb YouTube is there, but there's nothing there because I'm just, yeah.
Gotcha. You've done interviews with a couple of other people too. So if they just put in ketovoretinyb, they can find those too, I'm sure.
Yeah.
All right.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'll link that in the description below too. And we really appreciate you being here.
Yeah.
Thank you for spending some time with us. We love your posts. We love the content that you do put out there on Instagram. You're always so positive, and that smile is just infectious. Every time I see your smiling face, I smile. So
thank you, Lee.
For that.
Yeah, I'm so happy. I got to chat with you guys, and I love your YouTube channel. And I just love that you guys talk about real issues, because sometimes I think we just get so caught up with just the extremes. The science is great if you can understand it, but I just want to connect with the real people that just wake up and just face real life every day and how they navigate their life. And just knowing that I can connect with you guys. I listen to your, YouTube channel, people you interview, people that have had similar experiences. And then you have these other experts that come in and they answer questions that I might have thought about before. So it's just nice to have people like myself, regular people, just trying to get through this health thing together.
Yeah, absolutely.
We appreciate that. That's
thank you so much.
Focus. So thank you for saying that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, we'll keep in touch. We'll talk again soon. Thank you.
Ladies, you're welcome. Bye. I'm going to go eat some steak.
All right.
Enjoy.
Thank you.
Right. Love you, Tiny.
Love you.
Thank you.
Bye.